session of TestMu 2024. I am Prateek, Lead Solution Engineer at Lambda Test, and I'm thrilled to be your host for this session on HyperExecute. As many of you know, the landscape of software testing is evolving rapidly. Traditional testing methods are often no longer sufficient to meet the demands of today's fast-paced development cycle. That's where HyperExecute comes into play. Today, we have a very special guest joining us, Anmol Gupta, Senior Product Manager at Lambda Test, who's at a forefront of innovation with HyperExecute. Anmol will discuss how HyperExecute is revolutionized the software testing, providing faster, more reliable, and more efficient testing solutions. Whether you're a developer, QA engineer, someone passionate about the future of testing, today's session will offer actionable takeaways that you can apply to your own work. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, so in case if you need to drop off midway, don't worry. You will get full recording of this session on over your registered email. You can also find the recording of all the session over the AirView platform. We will also be uploading the full video over the Lambda YouTube channel. If you have any question during the session, please use the Q&A feature. We'll have a dedicated Q&A segment towards the end. So yeah, Anmol, over to you.
Thanks, Pradeep, for such lovely welcome. And a good day to everybody who is joining us today, and a very warm welcome to join this particular session. Today, we'll be talking about HyperExecute and how we are transforming the future of testing with HyperExecute. I am Anmol, and I lead HyperExecute over here at Lambda Test. You can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or email. In this session, we would be talking about how HyperExecute helps software testing teams to accelerate their testing cycles, provides flexibility in terms of framework they're using for testing, how it optimizes testing with smart orchestration features, provides real-time insights on the test cases, and at the end, how it leverages AI for faster root cause analysis. But before we dive into the solution side of things, let us take a look at the current testing practices. You'll be amazed to know that only 30% of testing time by the QA teams is actually spent on authoring the test cases, whereas a staggering 70% of the time is spent on mundane, tedious, and repetitive operations. If we dig a little deeper, there are things like fixing broken test cases, monitoring the test cases, environment setups, triaging, debugging, and many more things which are beneath the iceberg, wasting a lot of time and energy of the QA teams. But why does this happen? In order to understand that, let us take a look at the current practices. Multiple QA teams have a CI/CD pipeline on one side where they initiate the test executions, and on the other side, they have test result analysis tools or some sort of reporting tools. But over there lies a huge gap. The gap of infra provisioning, then checking whether the infrastructure is stable or not, managing dependencies which you might require to run the test cases. Then comes the actual part of running the test cases, followed by the artifacts that will get generated as a part of that execution, later to be utilized as analyzing metrics for the particular test cases. If you see these items, there are multiple manual interventions and inefficiencies in the whole process, resulting slow release cycles, wastage of testing bandwidth because of this disparate tooling, and as a result, leading to degradation in the deliverables. We studied all these problems and came out with HyperExecute, targeting the main 5 areas of problems, starting with the base of a unified test execution platform. Over that, providing layers of orchestrations and distribution of test cases in the most efficient manners. Building upon to provide a framework agnostic platform which would support running test cases written in any framework or any low-code, no-code tools. One step above, we baked in test observability and analytics as well into the platform. And on the cherry on the top, using all of this information, build test intelligence to help the QA teams better. To summarize, HyperExecute is a one-stop solution which enables execution of any kinds of test cases, no matter what testing framework you're using for authoring the test cases, or what applications you're testing as an end result of your tests. The best part, it is deployable over Azure, AWS, or GCP, even inside your VPC. The main goal of building HyperExecute, affirmed by one of the greatest CEOs, was how do we aim and enable teams to focus on what truly matters, which is essentially writing more test cases. And in order to do that, we have built multiple features into the platform. Starting off with the infra side, providing a scalable, stable infra, which is customizable, which is framework agnostic. It has intelligent caching mechanisms so that your consecutive runs become faster. Over that, a whole set of test orchestration features, such as automatic retries of failed test cases, test reordering and fail fast mechanisms, auto healing functionalities in case a test case fails, error categorization and AI powered root cause analysis, flaky test detections, and auto muting. Above that, we have also built in smart weights into the platform so that you don't need to mention explicit weights in your test cases, and you can truly focus on just authoring your test cases. Beyond that, we have also built functionalities like scheduled execution and support for low code tools into the platform. And again, cherry on the top is of test analytics. Now you get test analysis, test trends, everything under the same roof. If we divide into categories, on the CI front, we provide customizable functionality, which enables you to do things like dependency cachings, differential uploads, schedule your workflows. On infrastructure front, we provide a unified platform, which is scalable and reliable, made for enterprise grade testing, providing blazing fast speeds of execution. Is highly efficient in terms of cost because it scales up and down as per your need basis, and is also available to be securely deployed in terms of private deployments. On the orchestration front, ranging from multiple test orchestration mechanics such as autosplit or metrics mode, we also provide QA focused functionalities such as job prioritizations into the platform baked in. On the AI front, followed by AI RCA and flaky test detection, we have built in auto healing, auto muting of test cases, smart weights, and coming soon, one of the latest just in time accessibility testing as well. And as we were talking about analytics, we provide test analysis, test trends, shareable dashboards, all the video screenshots and other artifacts that you would need to figure out what went wrong with a particular test case, consolidated reports, and all kinds of performance KPIs that you would ever need for your test cases. All of this under the same roof. But what happens when you put all of these things under a same single platform? Well, our customers speak for it. We have huge customer success stories where customers have affirmed and shared never seen before execution speeds ranging from 50 to 70% faster test execution on the platform. Now, without further ado, let's deep dive into HyperExecute. In order to do that, let's quickly understand the key components of the HyperExecute platform. Apart from the scripts that you'd want to run on the platform, there are two key components. One, the HyperExecute YAML file, which contains all the instructions to run your test cases. Second, the HyperExecute CLI, which is nothing but a binary that runs your tests on the HyperExecute platform. Without further ado, let's quickly jump on towards our platform walkthrough. As you can see on my screen, I have a very simple set of tests that I will be executing today. In order to do that, let's first understand the YAML over here. As we discussed, a YAML contains multiple instructions which you can use to trigger your test cases. For instance, over here, I want to run this particular test on Linux and Windows, and I want to run my test cases on Chrome. There are multiple parameters which you can utilize as per your need basis. Just for the sake of this demo, let's quickly start running the test cases. In order to do that, the second component that you would require is the HyperExecute CLI, which obviously is a binary and cannot be shown here. In order to trigger my test cases, I just have to invoke this binary with my access keys and the HyperExecute YAML file that I want to use as instructions. Once I do that, the CLI would start communicating with the HyperExecute platform, taking the instructions that were given, the scripts that you'd want to execute, and it would send those scripts to the HyperExecute platform for execution purposes. In order to see this, let us quickly jump towards our platform. So over here, as you can see, we have already executed a sample job which has started running. And as we wanted to run on Chrome tests, our tests on Chrome and Linux and Windows, you can see that the platform has spin up just-in-time infrastructure. It is currently configuring this particular infrastructure to run the test cases based on the instructions that we have provided. Once it does that, it will start executing the test cases. Just for this demo, I have took the liberty to run this particular job beforehand. Over here, as you can see, we have this particular job where the pre-steps were executed. And after that, the scenarios containing all my test cases were executed. Few things to notice over here is, we were talking about customizability. HyperExecute using the YAML format provides me the flexibility to have specific pre-steps that I want to use for my test execution. Similarly, if I have a need of some background service, an app server, or for instance, a database server, it allows me to do that as well. And in every case, it would have the static server or the database server or the application server running within the machine where your test cases are getting executed. Moving one step further, if you want to actually see what is happening inside a particular test, you can go ahead. As you can notice, the system provides you the console logs in the platform. But if you want to dig deeper into the command logs or videos or other kinds of logs, network logs, and metadata related to your test case, it provides all of that under the same roof. Isn't that amazing? Going one step forward, you would also notice that in this second job, the platform is giving me a nudge that, hey, you can save up to 1 minute till 11 seconds if you run on a higher concurrency. Imagine utilizing a standard CI/CD platform and taking all of these decisions just based on your gut or manual understanding of your test suits. With HyperExecute, all of that is analyzed automatically, and the platform gives you the best suited parallelism numbers as well to give you faster test execution speeds. Going one step further, The platform also provides functionality to retry test cases. For example, over here, I have mentioned to retry my test cases one time on a failure. Now, the platform, whenever finds a failed test case, retries the test case automatically without you lifting a finger, and it all happens just in time while the test cases are running. Moving forward, as you can see, we have baked in fail fast mechanisms as well into the platform. What advantage does that bring? Imagine you running a lot of test cases and your test cases start to fail because of some external reason. The platform would automatically analyze that and fail the particular execution in a fail fast mode, saving you the resources and time you would otherwise have wasted on running these test cases as well. Obviously, all of this is something which is totally configurable via the YAML format. Going one step ahead, HyperExecute also provides running test cases in multiple orchestration modes. For instance, if you have certain test cases which you would want to run on multiple OSs at once, or for that matter, on multiple devices, you can do that all in HyperExecute. Over here, you can notice that we have the same test cases running on Windows and the same test cases also running on Linux. Similarly, as I was talking about iOS test cases or Appium based test cases, you can do sharding of those test cases on the same platform as well. Over here, we have executed this particular set of tests on multiple devices that you can see here. For instance, we have the same test case getting executed on iPhone 15, iPhone 11, and the same set of test case getting executed on iPhone 13 as well, on different Apple OS versions. All of this and sharding for parallel executions is possible with Lambda test and integration with our real device hub. Beyond that, as we were talking, because we are focused on solving all the problems of our QA team members and the customers, we've built features like auto heal within the platform. Imagine running a test case and then test case fails because of a locator change. You'd waste a lot of time figuring out what went wrong, doing the corrections, and then rerunning the whole test suite to figure out and pass a particular test case. With HyperExecute, that is a thing of the past. What happens when you're running a test case on HyperExecute is, because the platform knows what was running in this test case, it automatically keeps a tab of the locators that were getting utilized. And if it cannot find a particular locator, the platform automatically finds a nearest locator and tries to run the test case then and there with the healed selector or locator. Obviously, this is something which we would recommend you to take into consideration and correct in your test scripts, but something that we don't enforce. The information of this healed locator and the original selector would be available to you in your test cases. Moving one step ahead, we talked about running test cases on HyperExecute, how it shards, how it auto heals the test cases. But imagine now running the test cases and then juggling with seeing the history of that test execution in your reporting tool. With HyperExecute, we bring that as well into the platform. As you can see over here, this particular test, if I need to see the history, I can see the history of this particular execution right here. And as you can notice, because the test case was failing multiple times and it was failing earlier as well, the system auto muted this test case so that it is no longer a part of my execution. Again, this is also something which you can set as your org preference and totally customizable as per your need basis. Quickly jumping back on before we move forward, I'm today announcing a few major updates that we have made in the last year on HyperExecute. We've been hearing our customers, and as a result of that, we've brought in a projects section into the HyperExecute platform where you can see all of your testing results with respect to a particular project. We also introduced workflows in the project so that you can schedule your test executions, run nightly jobs, and forget about how the test cases are behaving or scheduling using other external tools. We also introduced performance testing for JMeter based JMX files within the platform. Now, apart from running your functional tests or end to end tests, you can also run your performance tests on the platform. I'm also happy to announce that we have extended the support for further no-code, low-code tools such as Tosca Dex. And last but not the least, accessibility testing is also something which we are starting to support on HyperExecute automation. Quickly jumping back and seeing all of these things in action, as you can see on my screen, I have multiple projects that I've set up, starting from some default projects to a custom set of projects which have multiple configurations, to Tosca Dex projects, to JMeter based testing. All of these kinds of tests are possible on HyperExecute. Let's take a deeper dive in all of these one by one. For normal Selenium based tests, you see the jobs of that particular execution or set of scripts at one place. You can also set up workflows. You can edit workflows, clone workflows, and run the test cases as per your scheduled needs. You can create nightly builds, or along with this, you can also link other workflows to your existing workflows. Talking about Tosca Dex, HyperExecute now integrates with Tosca Dex and provides you all of your test events on the portal for execution. You can simply select the execution events that you'd want to trigger, click on run, provide the number of parallels you would want to run, and you're good to go. Best part, the results also out of those text executions are exported back into the platform. You no longer need to go and see the test results in Tosca reports. As you can see, along with the logs of the particular executions, HyperExecute also provides you the full video recordings of what happened while this test case was running, which, by the way, acts as a great artifact when you're wanting to debug a failed test case. No more looking into screenshots or juggling through multiple reports to figure out what went wrong. You can utilize these videos and see exactly what went wrong at what particular point of time. Moving further, we talked about performance testing. For performance testing, you can upload your JMX files onto the HyperExecute platform, trigger the test execution. While triggering, you can provide the total number of users, durations, ramp up time, and all the metrics that you would want at a performance test case. Along with this, you can also, you can also split the load of your test execution across two regions. You can distribute the traffic as per your need basis, and you're good to go. You do not need to worry about infra procurement, load stability, load generation. All of that will be handled by HyperExecute. Once you do run a HyperExecute platform, once you do run a performance job on HyperExecute platform, you get all the necessary KPIs within the platform so that you don't need to go anywhere outside. You get the summary of the load, the response times, the timeline report of what was happening while the tests were running. You can filter as per your need basis on multiple KPIs that are provided. You can see the request stats. Similarly, you can see the errors. And if you want to dig deeper into the logs, you also get the logs of the machines that were generating these loads. That is not all. We also talked about accessibility, the analytics. Now, HyperExecute also provides analytics and all the necessary information around your test cases within the platform. As you can see, you can create multiple dashboards out of 50 plus widgets and share those with your team members. In those widgets, you get all the necessary details ranging from test summary to test trends, task summaries, snapshots, test trends, average test times, and much more. I would really encourage you to deep dive into our analytics platform. Beyond standard analytics, we also provide flakiness information about your test cases, where our algorithms figure out that out of your test suits, which tests have been flaky in nature or which tests are of unreliable nature. And you get all of this insights just out of the box. You do not need to set up any external items. You do not need to set up or configure any extra parameters. This is all baked in. Beyond that, going the AI way in the dashboarding, you can talk with our co-pilot and no longer need to even go through the whole dashboards. You can simply come and ask your questions respective to your needs, and our co-pilots would parse through the data and provide you with the prompt answers that you're looking for. With that said, let us quickly jump back. But wait, there's more. We are also launching HyperExecute GUI, which is a faster and a more easier way for you to get started with HyperExecute. You no longer need to configure your YAML files. All of that configurations can be done within this GUI. Along with that, we are also introducing and integrating with our test manager so that all of your testing needs and management needs are within the platform. And last but not the least, we are integrating with 𝐀𝐧𝐻 AI, one of our latest offerings in the AI realm, one of the first industry leading 100% testing autonomous testing agent. With that, let us quickly see all of these things in action as well. Let's start with the HyperExecute GUI. With the HyperExecute GUI, getting started becomes super simple. You just need to select your project, and once you're done with that, all of your test cases or test suits which are present inside the project will be visible to you over here on our GUI. You can simply select the tests that you want to execute, click on configure and run, tell where you would want to run your test cases, provide the number of concurrent threads you would want to run on, the retry failures, and multiple other advanced configurations if you're used to them in a YAML format within the GUI. And running that would result in a similar set of job as you see over here. Quickly going towards the test manager. As you can see over here, I have created this particular test case using our AI agent. Over here, the test case just goes to the Lambda test pricing page and then documentation page and does some basic checks. Fun fact about this test case, my 10-year-old nephew helped me create this test case just following the instructions of what he wanted to do. Using 𝐀𝐧𝐻 AI is that simple. And best part, you can see the code that is generated as a part of this particular test. If you want to download the test's code, you can do that as well. If you want to trigger the test execution directly onto HyperExecute, you can do that as well within one single click. And voila, all of your test cases that are created as a part of 𝐀𝐧𝐻 AI now can get executed on the HyperExecute platform. Last but not the least, we also talked about accessibility testing. HyperExecute now brings in accessibility testing as well within the platform. As you can see, I have executed a Cypress-based test over here. Going one step further, I can see all the commands, the logs, the network logs if I have any, the metadata, and similarly, if I want to see accessibility report, I see the accessibility results as well of my particular test case. If I want to have a detailed summary, I can click on the full report and see what went wrong or what are my issues in this particular set of tests. With that said, we at Lambda Test are focused on changing the future of software testing one step at a time. Thanks for your time today. You have been a lovely audience. Prateek, over to you. We can open for questions now.
Thank you, Anmol. That's session is very informative, and thank you so much. So yeah, we have a lot of questions over here.
Okay.
So yeah, let me start with one of the question is that okay. So we have a question: how does HyperExecute differentiate itself from traditional testing tools and platform in terms of speed and efficiency?
Great question, Subin. So that is fundamentally what we have changed in HyperExecute. Now you would imagine that with uh, for older tools, the traditional testing tools, you would have a set of Jenkins node or some sort of CI/CD pipeline from where you would be triggering your test cases. First, you will need a lot of nodes just to parallelize your test cases. Even after you have done that, all of the commands that you're running as a part of your test execution go one by one to the hub and then to the browser and then to the application or the web app that you're testing. There are multiple hops in this particular process. Because of these multiple hops, there are problems such as drops or test flakiness or larger duration of test execution. With HyperExecute, what happens is we combine the script, the hub, and the browser, and whatever else might be required for running your test cases into a single black box. And then we are executing your test cases on the cloud. So imagine you're running the tests on your local machine. We do run your test case at a similar speed, but on the cloud. That is how HyperExecute differentiates from traditional testing tools. I hope I was able to answer your question.
Yeah. So our next question is that how it can be more practical for an organization, when it's come to the hyper execute, how it is being more practical.
Yes. So I get this question quite often, Prateek and Jancy. Why? Because it is a platform, right? If you're running a tool, if you're running a set of test cases, maybe 10 or 20 test cases, HyperExecute is not a tool for you. HyperExecute is enterprise focused. When you have multiple teams, thousands of developers, multiple builds, multiple runs of test cases that are happening on a day-to-day basis, that is where the beauty of HyperExecute kicks in. You can have your multiple teams utilize the same infrastructure. They might be using different testing frameworks for that matter. You no longer need to set up different infrastructure for your different teams. All those teams can utilize a single layer of infrastructure which HyperExecute provides. Above that, as we were talking about our other orchestration features, HyperExecute learns from your prior runs. And based on those learnings, it makes your consecutive runs faster and better and more efficient. That is how I believe for your particular organization, you can get in touch with our customer success team and we'll get it up and running for you.
So our next question is, what is the future of hyper execute beyond AI, and what are the best practices you would share with people who wants to join it recently?
Yes, great question, Arber. So beyond AI, we want to bring all sorts of testing supports onto a single platform, whether it is the currently provided end-to-end tests or functional tests. And now we are already going towards performance tests and further low-code, no-code tools, or for that matter, any sorts of AI, for that matter, any sorts of testing. The end goal is not just test testing, right? Testing is one of the process that teams or QA teams do. There are a lot of other problems that QA teams face, things related to infra procurement, things related to, for that matter, writing the test cases, right? How do you debug the test cases? So we are focused on making the QA journey more smooth. How do we enable QAs to debug test cases faster? How do we have them feedbacks faster, right? So AI is a part of it, obviously, but the vision is to be a broader platform for all sorts of testing under one roof. In terms of best practices that you would want to share for people who are new to HyperExecute, we have a lot of ways in the test case in which your test cases can be executed faster, in which your overall execution cycles can be reduced. So based on your particular needs, you can go through our documentation and focus more on the use cases that have been mentioned to figure out and understand what will happen you more. We have had customers where parallelization was not just one thing that we helped them with. The customers had a huge set of dependencies which would, when they would run from a CI/CD pipeline, it would take them multiple tens of minutes to just resolve those dependencies. With HyperExecute, because we have a dependency caching mechanism inbuilt into the platform, all of those dependencies were getting cached on the platform, and that expedited their reduced their dependency caching or dependency resolution time from multiple minutes to a few seconds. And based on that, they were able to reduce a huge chunk in their regression cycles. So I would recommend you to go through all the functionalities that are provided. And obviously, you can also reach out to our customer support, discuss your case, and then we can get started from there.
Cool. So our next question is, can you explain how our smart auto split improves resource utilization during testing?
Okay. Ozzy, so smart auto split is one of the ways that we orchestrate the test cases. There are multiple other modes but you have asked about auto split. Imagine you have 100 test cases. Now, out of those 100 test cases, some are long running test cases, some are short running test cases. When you're, let's say, using standard parallelization without HyperExecute to run those test cases, the system would essentially do a FIFO kind of a mechanism. It'll do a round robin and then distribute your test case 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 in that manner, right? Because there is no other information available around your test cases. Now, because HyperExecute has the prior information about your test cases, obviously after the first run, what it does is it utilizes the information, the past execution times, the past failure results, and all of that to group the overall set of tests in a way so that the total testing duration is minimized. So, for instance, what it'll do is it'll group a few long running test cases with a few shorter running test cases. And the point is that keeps on happening and that the platform keeps on learning on day-to-day basis, which is practically not feasible even if you have your own algorithms around it. That is where autosplit improves the resource utilization and reduces your overall testing duration. I hope that answered your question.
Yep. So another interesting question, we heard most of the users, they have the issue when it's come to the stability of their test cases, and they are facing a lot of flakiness when they are executing their test cases or the standard platform, or if you talk about over their local, environment. So how HyperExecute actually, handling those stability issues?
Right. So, David, that this is precisely why we built HyperExecute, because stability issue is one of them, and the problem with stability is that the only way to figure out whether your test cases worked is to rerun the whole set of tests again, right? With HyperExecute, because everything is packed inside a single machine, imagine running your test cases on your local laptop, just like you would have the browser there, your test scripts here, all of your dependencies on your laptop. that is the most stable way to run a test case, right? Well, that is what we do in the cloud in HyperExecute.
Okay. So our next question is regarding that a part of Selenium, Cypress, and Playwright, which are the other frameworks which are supported on HyperExecute?
So apart from these frameworks, we are supporting multiple other frameworks and low code, no code tools. We support, you've mentioned Selenium, Cypress, Playwright. We also support Puppeteer, Appium, Espresso, Maestro, XUI, and low code, no code tools such as Catalan and Tosca.
Yeah. It's more on like just like framework language agnostic tool which we HyperExecute is.
And the beauty of HyperExecute is, guys, even if you have your custom framework or let's say a custom set of scripts which are maybe a legacy code in your organization, the platform can run that as well. So if you have any such frameworks, Vincenzo, please feel free to reach out to us.
Cool. So I guess yeah, those are the questions which we have on Moon. And yeah, thank you so much, and thank you so much, audience, for your I hope you guys have learned a lot of about the HyperXD today. So cool.
Cool. Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for joining in today. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day. Bye bye.
Bye.